This is a updated guide for Hot Zone in Brawl Stars. I figured since Supercell updated their game, I might as well update my Hot Zone guide since some strategies change as well. So let's start with the strategy for one zone maps, and it's fairly basic, but I mean, after playing with randoms who just go in and feed the opponents for 3 minutes straight, I think it's important that I do go over it. So in short, you just want to maintain control of that center for more time than your opponents. Now, in order to do that, you have to actually get control first. And in order to get control, you really want to play very, very cautiously and make sure you're taking as little damage as possible. You just want to slowly chip down your opponents in the center while also dodging their attacks and taking cover. And this is actually pretty easy to do because if they're standing on the zone in the middle, they just don't have cover, but you can take cover and use that to your advantage and give yourself a bit of an edge on them. So that way you can deal damage to them without them dealing damage back to you. And you want to come at the zone from different sides when you're dealing that chip damage because it just makes it impossible for them to dodge all the attacks when they're coming from so many different directions, and it really just leaves them nowhere to go but back to their spawn and away from the zone, which is exactly where you want them. So you just want to keep doing this and chipping them down, and then once they're low enough, you just want to have your whole team rush in and completely take out the opposing team, and then just like that, you have control of that center zone. But if you're alone because your teammates ended up dying, which happens quite often, you really have to make sure to just wait for your team and heal, or just stay extremely far back, because you really need to avoid taking heavy damage at all costs, because if you just keep feeding your opponents, it's going to be impossible to win. You need your entire team to actually take control of the center, so if you're alone, there's no chance of you taking control of the center, so don't act like you can. And then once you get control, you have to actually keep it for the rest of the game. So in order to keep control, you want to make sure that your team spreads out and only have 1 or 2 people in the zone at one time. Having multiple people won't make you gain percentage faster, so you only need those 1 or 2 people, and then once you spread out, you can make sure that someone like a Jesse or a Penny or a Thrower won't get a ton of damage off on all of you at once because you're clumped together. Now, the people that aren't in the zone should just try to apply pressure to the opponents, essentially just walk near them and try to force them out of their cover, so that way it's easier to kill them. And really, you just want to make it as hard as possible for them to use the strategies that I just talked about for how to get control. And that's basically it for the maps with just a single zone in the center. Fairly simple. But now things get a bit more complicated when you move on to the maps that have 2 zones. So right at the beginning of the game, you want to have one person go to one zone and another person go to the other zone, and both of these people who have that set zone that they're going to should be brawlers that can really hold their own in terms of damage and in terms of range, because if you put someone like a Rosa or a BB, a melee brawler, alone, and then the opponent sends a lone Colt, for example, there's really not any good way to win that matchup unless they're a freaking noodle and just let you get close enough for some reason. But that's never a good idea. So it's good to send range brawlers with a decently high amount of damage to those zones, because if they end up being alone, they should still do just fine. And then that third person needs to go in the middle, and their job is to always make either one or both matchups favorable in each of the zones. So for example, if you have a Colt on the left side and just turns out that there's a lone Nita from the opponent's team going to face the Colt, that's great. The Colt has a great matchup against the Nita since he outranges her, and so you don't need to help him out. So what you should do is apply more pressure on the other zone where there are 2 of your opponents, so that way you stand more of a chance of killing them and holding the zone for as long as possible. But then if you kill your opponents and they respawn and go to the other zone, then you might need to reconsider where you are and maybe switch over to the other zone and help him out, since it now becomes an unfavorable matchup for him because it's a 1v2, and that's almost always unfavorable. So you can help that Colt out and deal damage and try to gain back control of that zone. And obviously, if there's no opponents on one of the zones, always make sure you go over to the other zone. That seems obvious, but a lot of times what'll happen is there will be 2 of you on one side and you kill both of your opponents, but then both of you just stand there. You have to make sure that one of you goes over to the other side, because that damage is being wasted. One person standing in the zone is just as effective as both of you standing in the zone, except when one person is standing in the zone, the other person can go and actually deal damage on the other side. So always make sure that if a lane is completely empty, there's only one person, and that person should probably be the weakest in terms of defending a zone, so that way you can send your strongest brawlers over to help and take control of the other zone. And then another point in the game when you need to reevaluate how your brawlers are allocated to each of the zones is once one zone is completed, and this can be for either your team or for the other team. So if you get the first zone, then what you want to do is make sure you just leave one person there to defend, and then you want the 2 other people on your team to go on offense in the other zone and try to charge that one up and end the game. And this method lets you apply enough pressure to quickly fill up that second zone that you need, but that one person on the other zone is still going to be able to deny your opponent's percentage from that zone that they still need to take out. It's going to just slow them down while you're still on offense on that other zone. And this is opposed to all of you just going to the other zone that you still have to get. And honestly, that just makes no sense because you're going to be gaining percentage at the same rate. You just won't have any way to defend the other zone and slow your opponents down. But if instead your opponents are the one who got the zone first, the only way you can win the game is by really good defense. So the best way to win here is to put 2 brawlers from your team on the zone that your opponents still need to fill up, and just defend as much as you can, and then leave that one brawler on the zone that they had already filled up, but that you probably still need to fill up as well. And hopefully your opponents aren't too aggressive on that zone and you can basically get it for free. And then essentially you just have to win the other zone and make sure to constantly kill them, and that's going to be your only chance of winning. And it is going to be difficult, but I have done it several times, and I do think this is the optimal way to allocate each of your brawlers to the zones. So you just gotta hold both zones at the same time with that 2-1 split, and that's the best shot you're gonna have at winning the game. So that's basically it for the guide. Overall, just make sure you really don't aggressively try to push in a zone. Just chip from far away where you can have that cover, and then just push in when you know you can get the kills, and then just hold that control as long as possible, but always focus on staying alive rather than getting that extra 1 or 2% in the zone. But that's gonna wrap it up for this hot zone guide. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that way you will know whenever I post a brand new guide like this, so you can become a pro in Brawl Stars. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.
Make the streams louder.